yes, how inspiring. You know what? The organizers have really gone out of their way this year for months on end. I can see her. She's typing away on her phone right now. Tina, shout out to Tina and the whole team. The whole AV team led by Jimmy and everybody, Amar, all of the wonderful helpers that we have, the hosts. This has been brilliant. Diligently organized over the last few months, and really it shows here on stage because the intellectual exchange is right up there, pushing the bar, inspiring people, and hopefully we can all go away thinking, actually we'll take that leap of faith in the business or the startup or the particular project that we're actually just keeping on the sidelines, but we might be able to dive deep into it with the inspiration that we're sharing. So this has been absolutely wonderful. And in keeping with that high note of speakers and the intellectual exchange, the next session really does deliver as well. We're looking at resetting and empowering the new generation of founder. And as my wonderful colleague here is setting the scene in order to make sure the speakers are all comfortable, I will introduce our moderator, Remo Giovanni. He's a GM MENA of checkout.com. So check them out after this. And the founder of Mumzworld, based here in the UAE, is Mona Ataya. She's our special guest for this wonderful fireside. Please, without further ado, please give them a very warm welcome and welcome them on stage. Thank you so much. Thank you. That should be great. Thank you. Hello and welcome. Hello.
Hi. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. Very excited to be part of this session, and most importantly, I have the pleasure today to have a very interesting fire chat with Mona. As all of you might know, Mona is the co-founder and the CEO of Mumzworld, the largest marketplace for baby moms products in the region. However, not many of you that might know that Mona has been a serial entrepreneur in the region, as back in 2000, she decided to set up another e-commerce company, another business in digital, bait.com. The e-commerce penetration, the digital penetration was around 2% at that time. And I would like to start by asking Mona, why did you decide to come in Middle East?
Good afternoon, everyone. So I came back to the region in 2000. Older than most of you have even been in the region. I came back at the time when internet penetration was less than 2%. I was initially based in Europe as a director for a Johnson & Johnson. So I had a standard corporate professional career ladder, and I decided to leave all that and come back to the region and start the digital revolution at the time when internet penetration was less than 2%, and it was at the time the digital bust. So a lot of people who had been online in 2000 were leaving online because of the very shaky ecosystem.
And if you look back, bait.com, then Mumzworld, how the dynamic have been changed in the region since you started these two different businesses, yet still in the digital world?
So with Bait, we were among the early entrepreneurs. It was us and 3 other players in the market. And we came back to help shape the digital ecosystem in the Arab world. And Bait did that, and Bait is still around over 2 decades later. With Mumzworld, when we launched Mumzworld in late 2012, e-commerce requires a lot of enablers on the ground to be successful. So for e-commerce to function, you need payment gateways that work, that are reliable, that are secure. You need tech talent. You need first mile and last mile suppliers and partners that operate with speed. You need a tech infrastructure that allows you to operate the entire e-commerce supply chain. All of that in 2012 did not exist. So in essence, we created an e-commerce business in an ecosystem that was very much almost a vacuum. So we had to help shape that ecosystem to accommodate our growth, and we have come a long way. So today, in the UAE in particular, we are in a very sophisticated e-commerce environment with payment gateways that have come a long way, tech talent that's rampant, supply chain that's becoming very automated. So the evolution has been very real.
That's good to see. So essentially 4 main items: payment ecosystem is evolving, talents, the logistics, supply chain, and last but not least, the tech and infrastructures. So among these 4, if I will ask you, what do you think is the biggest achievement of Mumzworld? What do you think you fixed better than the others? The talents, the acquiring, the gateway, tech infrastructure, or the supply chain?
So I don't know if we fixed one better than the other. We certainly had to solve for all in order to be successful. So in the early days, I remember tech talent, particularly related to e-commerce, was very difficult to find. So back in 2012, developers that understood open source technology, there were 2 in all of the UAE and there were 0 in Saudi Arabia. Developers that understood data infrastructure, we couldn't find them. So talent was very difficult to find in the early days. And not only was it hard to find talent, we didn't have the deep pockets to source international talent. So what you had to do is you had to hire reactively. You had to train on the ground. That wasn't optimal. And you had a lot of failures before you had successes. Over time, as we raised capital, as the business gained momentum, we were able to attract more regional talent and more international talent. And as the digital ecosystem also became more sophisticated, more talent started coming into the region. But this was really a painful journey. So talent was one of our greatest challenges. And with every milestone of the business, we had different challenges that came with talent. The other one was supply chain. We work today with over 7,500 suppliers, locally, regionally, and internationally. We have over 350,000 SKUs. Most of these local and regional suppliers, up until really a couple of years ago, didn't even have basic ERP systems. So when you went to a supplier who has 1,000 SKUs or 20,000 SKUs, they were sending you manually updated Excel sheets for you to read and upload. So incredibly unsophisticated supply chain, and that also has come a long way. Customer payment. So we've moved from a cash-heavy ecosystem where customers didn't trust credit cards, didn't trust online payments. And imagine operating a scaling business with cash. A, it's very complex. B, it's very risky. And C, it's unsustainable. So customers have come a long way from going from a cash-heavy to a contactless digital payment ecosystem. And this is thanks to payment gateways like checkout.com, for example, that have come into the ecosystem and have presented sophisticated, secure, reliable payment gateways that shifted the customer from a particular type of transaction to a more robust transaction. So these are just some of the shifts we've seen over the years.
That's great to hear. No? Thank you for providing your perspective on the talents, and it's a good news for everyone in the room as well that it was a pain, but you come a long way, as you said, and it's easier, obviously, to attract talents and with better skills as well. And it's very interesting also you mentioned the payments. Piers, on checkout.com, one of the recent research we published, we see in the region 91% of the people living in this part of the world, they shop online. 14% they do once per day, at least, which definitely is a good news for business like yours. And last but not least, 4 out of 5, they prefer to pay with a digital payment method. You touch base the trust factor when it comes to cash and delivery. And I'm assuming when you started Mumzworld more than 10 years ago, credit card was, okay, let's try. And now cash is probably the opposite? Or do you still see something missing that will allow users to still not pay digitally, essentially?
So when we started, over 80% of our transactions were cash. What we were seeing in the early days was once a customer purchases from an online site with cash and their experience was bulletproof and robust, then their next transaction would be credit card. That's what we saw in the UAE. We didn't see that in markets like Saudi Arabia and the rest of the GCC. So for Saudi Arabia, cash payments stayed very high, really up until a couple of years ago. So the evolution from cash to contactless and credit cards was much slower outside the UAE. You asked, why do customers choose cash? Trust that the website will actually deliver what they promise, and B, security and privacy. So even today, although it's come a long way, even today there is an element of, is my information private? Am I secure? What if this payment fails? Will they take my information? So there are ways now that partners are solving for that. So encrypted credit cards and privacy policies that are very robust. All of these are alleviating some of the pain points of customers.
That's interesting that you mentioned this, and definitely says a lot of work still need to be done from players like us in terms of trust and security, and making sure that users, they feel safe, obviously, when they enter the card information. And I think also interesting the point you mentioned about the returning customers, that they were selecting cash and on credit card as a following transaction in the UAE. Have you seen similar trend in other countries? Obviously, UAE and Saudi are the biggest countries, but you serve a broader region.
So we actually don't allow cash on delivery in markets outside the UAE and Saudi.
Okay.
We don't allow that. Needless to say, conversion, because of the absence of cash, is lower. So cash does improve conversions, particularly for the first-time customers and for this region in particular.
What do we notice in this region specifically, in the other countries, the importance of the alternative payment methods? Knet in Kuwait, for example, Omanet in Oman, they try to help the reduce of cash, because I think we see the efforts of regulators to push more towards like cashless society. Talking about the cashless society, we know it's one of the Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia. Tamer Group in 2021, 2 years ago, has acquired Mumzworld, one of the most successful one in the region post-COVID. What has changed for you and Mumzworld post-acquisition?
So Mumzworld was acquired by a Saudi conglomerate in 2021, a large healthcare conglomerate called the Tamer Group. And the reason for the acquisition was a strategic one. So as Mumzworld, since 2012, we raised 5 rounds of funding. The business was in hyper growth. We were and remain the largest vertical e-commerce play for mother, baby, and child. We are today the gateway into about 3 million households in the Arab world. We have the deepest catalog for mother, baby, and child. And we kind of evolved with the ecosystem. In 2011, we knew that given that we were the gateway into the Middle Eastern household, there were a lot of opportunities that we could grow into. So healthcare was a very important vertical for us. And access to cash, it was mentioned earlier by Fadi Ghandour that access to cash is very important for scale. So we knew that as we continue to scale, we needed access to cash, we needed continued access to sophisticated infrastructure, and most importantly, we needed to be able to launch into other verticals. And so the Tamer Group was a natural partner for us for acquisition. For the region, this was a great win. Because we were able to now join forces with a group that would allow for these type of enablers. What has changed for all partners or for all founders who decide to exit, the decision to exit is one of the most important decisions. It's probably more important than choosing your investor, because choosing your investor, while it's critical, you can kind of walk away from that partnership if you wanted to. Choosing your acquirer you can never walk away from. So that's kind of you've sealed the door. And so choosing the right DNA, the right values, the right vision for your baby, for your business is very important. Tamer is a 100-year-old brick and mortar legacy healthcare company. That is very different from Mumzworld, who's a pure play, vertical, e-commerce, digital play. Very, very different. We launch products in 3 days. They launch products in maybe 3 years. You know, we hire and fire in minutes. They hire and fire in months. So the DNA, the operating rhythm, the culture is very, very different. And so for us, the first year of that marriage was about really understanding how do you operate, how do we operate, and how can we grow together. They want to digitize, and we want to democratize. So there's value added in both of our operating rhythms where we meet halfway, we learn from them, and they learn from us. So not easy, but an important alliance if you get it right and if you go over the hump successfully.
Great feedback, and thank you for sharing with all of us today. And I think it's a good segue to my last question. We are at the 10X event. A lot of entrepreneurs, founders here. They're looking at this exit at some point, as you mentioned. And I like you said, you know, investors, you have many. You might make a mistake or pick up the wrong one, but when you decide to sell your business to the partner, kalas, right? So what's the last piece of advice you will give to anyone in the room who might be in this situation?
In terms of exit?
In terms of exit.
So look, again, when you exit your business, it was said earlier, you're in control of the destiny of your business. That's true and not true, because as a founder, you have zero control over anything, literally. You have zero control. Anything can happen and does happen. But at least you have this illusion that I can go left or right. Once your business is handed over to someone else, that decision to go left or right is not fully yours. So choose your exit partners wisely, because at the end of the day, you are always connected to that business as a founder, even when you exit. So, you know, even though we've exited, we are still linked to the Mumzworld journey and still linked to the Mumzworld's conceptualization and start. And obviously, we want Mumzworld to be here for the next 20 years and beyond.
Great piece of advice, and choose your partner for your exit wisely. Ataya, founder and CEO of Mumzworld, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.